This video is made possible by our sponsors, AJA. We'd like to thank AJA for all their support and tell you to go to aja.com for all your production and post-production needs. Hi, I'm Gordon Burkell from Filmmaker U. At Filmmaker U, we create courses for film professionals to deepen and diversify your existing skill set. You can learn more at filmmakeru.com, or of course follow us on Twitter at filmmaker_u. Every week we interview a film professional to discuss their work, and this week I'm joined by Liza Cardinale and Matthew Freund, the editing team behind Schmigadoon Season 2, also known as Schmicago. Welcome to the show, guys.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Thank you.
I guess my first question, and this is a completely selfish question, do you know if there's going to be a Season 3, and are they going to get into Andrew Lloyd Webber? Is it going to be set around Andrew Lloyd Webber? What do you know so far?
Well,
That you're allowed to say.
I don't know anything for certain, and Apple hasn't released anything.
Okay.
I know that when I saw Cinco at an event for Schmigadoon, he implied to me that he was starting to work on a Season 3. Now, probably that's all off at the moment because writers are pencils down. But it gave me a lot of hope. I don't know the concepts. I don't know anything. I'm sure Lloyd Webber plays a part because he was a huge, he was the titan of the 90s, the next phase of musicals. And it seems like if we're following the pattern that we're just going to go up a level. Yeah.
Well, so how did you guys get involved with this show? Like how did you get started on this show?
Well, I started on Season 1. I was kind of cold contacted by Taylor Siegel from Broadway Video. She's a co-producer on the show, and she told me about the series and told me, Cinco Paul written the whole thing with Ken Dario, and Barry Sonnenfeld was directing the first, 6 episodes. And that, got me extremely excited from the get-go because I've been a fan of Barry Sonnenfeld like for my whole life. So that was kind of, that was like a thrilling, like idea that I could possibly work with him. I met with them, it went great. And I ended up on Season 1 and came aboard for Season 2.
How about yourself, Liza?
Well, for me, I benefited by the other editor of Season 1, Allie Greer, wonderful editor. She was busy with Barry. So I found out through the grapevine of editors sharing information that there was a position open. And I immediately sent in my resume with an enthusiastic paragraph about how much I love musicals and would be eager to work on this, and got the interview with Cinco, and the rest is history.
My friends and I would make little videos in our backyards, imitations of Indiana Jones and Star Wars. Eventually that need to tell stories became more of a technical interest and an interest in the art. To me, what's exciting is using cinema in its full potential, which is rhythm and sound design and music. Our job is to set up expectations and then deliver on them. I'm Brian Cates, and this is my course in film editing.
So because you guys like musicals, what would be your go-to musical that you would tell someone to go check out if they had to go see a musical?
Well, I think Little Shop of Horrors is a really good crowd pleaser for the ages. I also heard Xanadu. I don't think Cinco shares my love for Xanadu because I've brought it up many times. Like, is it going to be a Xanadu theme Season 3? And no, I don't think it will be. But that is one that I love. I love ELO. I love all the music. I love anything Olivia Newton-John. I love Grease. I love Cabaret. I love Sweet Charity. So for this to be set in the 60s and 70s was a real sweet spot for me. I love Shirley MacLaine and Liza Minnelli, and I said that in my interview. Like, my name is Liza. You have to hire me for this job.
How about yourself, Matthew?
I love Little Shop of Horrors. Like that was my favorite musical always. But yeah, when I grew up listening to Phantom of the Opera and Les Miserables and stuff like that, those were constantly playing in my dad's car when he would like drive us to a bus stop in the morning. So those are just like baked into my mind.
So like the kids could hear you coming to the bus stop. They're like, "Oh, here comes
Yeah.
Matthew."
Yeah, I would be belting it out through the car. Yeah, no, but yeah, those were and like Grease. Yeah, I loved Grease also.
So what would you say are some of the technical challenges that you have to sort of tackle when doing a musical that editors who haven't done a musical might not be aware of?
There's a lot of sync to think about, and you need an assistant editor who is willing to do the heavy lifting of taking a song. Actually, I don't think Matt did this, but I did this, where I would have the song laid out, and that would just be the playback track. And then on top of it, I wanted every potential video that could be used for different parts of the song. And then it just gave me a very easy tableau to look at and say, okay, for this part of the song, I'm working with these setups, and then I'm switching. And this one runs maybe through the whole thing, though that's rare. And then I would have a group that also sunk up to the song, but was from every possible take and angle. So I could just play that group. It might have like 30 things grouped together. And I could see, okay, for this lyric, what are all my options? For this little hit in the music, clearly I can see what the choreography is wanting to do here. So for me, that was very helpful. So I'd say knowing what to ask for from your assistant and finding an assistant willing to do that, because it's a bit of extra work. But Matt had a different process. So you tell them what you did.
Yeah, I didn't do that. I kind of did the classic, just like watch everything down, all the cameras at once, pull my favorite pieces and kind of do rough versions of it at first, and then assemble the whole thing, and then kind of go back and rethink it. And sort of like any typical scene you might edit. But yeah, I think with this show, because like a lot of the time, yes, it's a musical, but it's a comedy. So we're also a lot of the time like undermining a lot of the musical moments with reactions from people. Well, specifically from the Josh and Melissa characters. So yeah, we're building like the rhythm of the song as it's written, but also looking for those specific spots to put reactions, and also to not get too repetitive with the reactions. Those are probably the biggest challenges that I felt, while cutting them.
Did you guys, so I have to imagine that you get sort of locked off in terms of the pacing, because it's going to be dictated to you by the music, it's going to be dictated by the choreography, all this stuff. But did you guys ever have to tighten up like a musical scene, or cut parts out and sort of make the scene smaller? And if so, how did you tackle something like that? Because it feels like that would be a very difficult thing to do when you're trying to keep everything in sync with what's been structured or created.
Yeah.
Very fair. Sorry, Matt, you go on.
Sorry. Yeah, I was going to say we did that. I did that very, very minimally. I mean, I wouldn't ever do that on my own, like take lyrics out of the songs or pieces, because I always would want, Cinco Paul, the showrunner and writer of this whole thing, to see it as he wrote it. And then maybe down the line have those conversations with him, or if he's feeling it, or if he gets a note from someone else possibly to think about it. But yeah, he's pretty attached to the lyrics. So that, for me, that was very minimal when we did that.
How about yourself, Liza?
Yeah, same with me. It was very minimal. That there was never a song where we would lift out a phrase or anything. Occasionally we'd lift some dialogue in the middle of a song, and then that becomes challenging because you have to seamlessly link the musical interlude and to pace the dialogue in a way that also makes sense. So that would be the trickiest thing I ever had to do there.
Now, before we got on to the recording here, I asked you guys if there's any particular scenes that you would like to talk about. And Matthew, just to start with you, you talked about you wanted to talk about the power of the parable and how it was difficult to cut that scene. Can you go into what made it so difficult?
Yeah, I think part of it was that, so this is the scene when Josh is talking to the tribespeople, and he, Topher tells him, is trying to explain to him the power of the parable. So they give an example of a parable to him, which is the lamb without a flock. And it was challenging because it's not written as a musical number, but it's supposed to feel sort of like a musical number. And so we spent a lot of time trying to figure out the right pacing for that particular scene. Also, throughout the whole thing, Josh, his character, Keegan-Michael Key's character is hating on it like the entire time, which is what makes that funny. But at the same time, you don't want the audience to also think like to actually hate it, So it was really about pacing and rhythm and also music in particular there. I'd put like a very simple underscore throughout it. And then our composer, who was Chris Willis, he's genius. He scored it amazingly. Like he hit every beat and just like really made it flow. And by the time, I felt pretty good about it by the time Cinco and I had locked the cut of it. But then by the time I saw it when it was released, I was just like, wow, that was like really good. That was funny and it felt really fast. And I enjoyed watching it, and the people in the tribe were actually funny. So yeah, I was really happy with how that turned out.
What's interesting about the tribe though, is it's such a different tonal shit because it's mimicking hair.
Yeah.
So
and Jesus Christ Superstar.
Superstar.
Yeah.
So like
Godspell, I think, right?
Godspell, totally Godspell. Yeah.
Well, that's the tricky thing with Schmigadoon is like I'll be like, oh yeah, it's referencing this, and then people will show me 5 other things. Did you have any trouble with getting the tonal shift there, going from the darker stuff to the?
I really feel like Liza could answer this really well, because in episode 2 you have the introduction of Topher, and that like is when he first comes into the show, and it's like he's a big shift from the rest of what we've set up so far.
Yeah, that's true. Then we go out of Chicago 30s with Cabaret, which is also set in the 30s or 40s. So now we're ramping up to the 60s, with maybe a hint of the 70s, and which is actually when Chicago was created. Not the movie that people know, but the stage show, I think, was more Cinco's inspiration, stage shows in general. So when he had a list of videos he wanted us to watch to just get into the groove before we started, a lot of them were just, really simple cameras shooting a Broadway stage production versus movie inspirations. So it just, I don't know, it felt like it transitioned naturally into hippie culture. It really kicked up a huge notch with Everyone's Got to Get Naked when we get to see the junkyard and all the rainbow, kaleidoscope effects. And that was the first time I think we got to live in that world.
Yeah.
Just in Topher was more like a hint of it.
Now, is there a particular character that you guys, outside of the 2 main characters, that you guys were really fond of?
Loved the addition of the narrator this season.
That was fantastic.
He just, which is that's like a reference to Pippin, right? So I just thought he added so much. It was so fun, and that was also like that was kind of a big stylistic shift from season 1 to season 2. It was something different that was it just was really additive, I thought.
I was just going to say Bobby Flanagan, because I thought Jane Krakowski, and she didn't have that much to do in season 1, but she has so many talents, and I just loved seeing her strut, which is pretty much all she did in my episodes. But of course, Matt did her huge bells and whistles number. But even just her strutting down a corridor with no angles to cut to, just as oneer, she still is so charismatic and watchable. You're just glued to her every movement. I don't know how she does it.
She gives 110%. Like it was like that in 30 Rock, where it could be something really small, but she's throwing herself all in. And
she did.
Taking
Yeah,
risks.
she did all of those stunts in that bells and whistles scene.
Yeah, well, the
swinging
reason I
from the
know that is because I
trapeze.
talked to the costume designer, and they were like, we had to keep changing and like doing all that.
Yeah.
So sorry, Liza, I was going to ask you about the final medley. What were some of the challenges in creating that?
Well, the final medley had a lot of challenges because it was shot over about 5 days, maybe 6. And so it came in very piecemeal, and there was pretty much no choreography. It was just people standing there, doing this once in a while, which at first I was insecure about, thinking, oh my God, we've had all these flashy dance numbers, and now we're just expecting people to watch a group of people sing and talk. But as it came together, after all the pieces came in, and we cut a lot of narrator talk out to try to keep it moving, we cut a little bit of song out. I'd say that was the most challenging, was keeping it musical and flowing and alternating between dialogue and singing. But the simplicity was the magic of that scene, I'd say, is that I didn't have to be insecure that there wasn't a lot of razzle dazzle to it. The simplicity let you just go along with the emotion of the song. And sometimes that's the most appropriate thing to do. But, I really want it to be emotionally impactful because it's the whole end, is the end of the season. And then, but I feel like it was, and I've watched it many times since then. And I love the finale episode. And the leprechaun itself was also a little challenge because that was Martin Short, of course, playing both parts, shot all by himself on a green screen stage in New York. And then I'd have to find pieces where it looked like they were kind of interacting with each other. And I'd have to slow one side down and speed it up here to get them to look like they're talking to each other. It's just really tricky to have an actor play opposite themselves, shooting it the same day. So it's not like they can play off of my cut of it. Yeah. So anyway, it took a lot of massaging to get that right. And then the VFX came together really well. All of Josh and Melissa's side was green screen also. So for a long time, I felt like the medley scene was playing a little half baked because every time, you're seeing all these green emptiness behind them and no leprechaun, just cutting to an empty plate and like writing in the words. So I feel like that's just part of the process of editing sometimes, is that you don't have all the pieces. You try to make it play as well as you can with what you have.
Wow.
And then you get to painting in the colors later.
Now, I have to ask, is there a musical that they haven't incorporated into the series that you would love to see incorporated, whether it would, you wish it had been in season 1 or in the future seasons?
Yeah,
Maybe Wizard of Oz. Was there any Wizard of Oz in season 1?
No,
I like the magic stuff.
Yeah.
Now, does he include film musicals, or is it only stage plays that become films? Did Wizard of Oz have one that was?
I know there's a lot of Sweet Charity. Was that ever? I think it was on stage first, wasn't it?
Yeah, I'm not informed enough about.
Yeah, any that started as a film. I don't think so.
Okay, well, it could be any musical.
Could be wrong. We need a fact checker on that.
Yeah, we need Cinco here to tell us that.
How about yourself, Matthew? Is there a particular musical?
Yeah, for like future, you know, if there is another season of the show, I'd love to see, you know, Grease would be super fun.
Oh,
to
that
see
would've been great.
that.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
They haven't included Grease.
Yeah, or like we said, Little Shop of Horrors, you know, that would be awesome.
I feel like that's an 80s. That came out in the 80s, didn't it?
Yeah.
Little Shop of Horrors. Yeah, so it's perfect.
Yeah, so that could
Yeah.
be.
Yeah. Well, so my last question for you guys is, what would you say is your favorite guilty pleasure film or TV show to watch?
Mine is sort of like guilty pleasure would be like, you know, show maybe like House Hunters International or something like that, where it's like, you know, it's you know what you're gonna get, and it's if you need to turn your brain off at night and just watch something like that, that's a escapist kind of show.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say if I'm fully honest, which I will be for you, it is Love Island UK.
Oh, it's so much better than the American.
Yeah, I don't think I'd ever watch the American. Not interested. I like the British slang. I like to feel like I'm traveling to Europe.
The Scottish guy who talks through it.
Yeah, I love the Scottish narrator. It's a beautiful brain break, and I get involved with it. Usually takes about 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And then you get all invested in them. You're like, don't lie to them, don't mess with them, you know, be true, be loyal. And it's also interesting to me to see how the British public vote and how they really do celebrate people who are loyal and true. They want to see some real love.
Yeah.
Whether it continues
it's,
after the camera.
Yeah, it's a weird concept, but like, whatever
It's
real
so
love
weird.
is in Love Island. So
yeah, I never thought it would happen to me, but it did.
Well, thank you so much for letting me interview you today.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh,
It's good
thank you.
talking.
Thanks. And that's it for this week, everyone. Make sure to check us out at filmmakeru.com, or of course follow us on Twitter at filmmaker_u. I'm Gordon Burkell. Thanks for watching. This video is made possible by our sponsors, AJA. We'd like to thank AJA for all their support and tell you to go to aja.com for all your production and post-production needs.